Hello, everybody, and welcome to TYT Nation Live. I really apologize about the lateness. We've had some internet issues over at the studio, i.e. my apartment. So we really apologize for being super late. Like I said, technical issues. If you're watching this later on YouTube as I post up the full episodes, then you don't really have to worry about it. You're not going to have any issues watching this or anything like that. But I want to apologize to our live stream viewers. I really thank you guys for coming out and watching the show, supporting the show, and we're really sorry about the internet issues, but there was nothing we could actually do. So we just had an internet brownout here in the area. So anyway, got a lot of great stories for you today on this Monday, which totally feels like a Monday. I don't know about you guys, but I am like super tired from the weekend. Had a lot of fun though. Play a lot of video games. So that's a lot of fun. But we have a lot of stories, like I said today, a lot of great stories. We're going to start out, of course, with something that's a little bit boring, budget deal. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, who is affected by the budget deal, and what's going on. Fuck. Looks like we're having some more internet issues. I do apologize, like I said, if we drop out. Still having a lot of problems. But anyway, I want to get into some of the stories so at least I can record it later and put it up online later. So I guess we're going to start out first with the budget. Get the boring stuff out of the way before we get into the fun stuff, such as war on Christmas and stupid Republicans. That should be a lot of fun. So as you can see, we have a bit of a deal between Patty Murray and Paul Ryan. This has to do, of course, with the fiscal year 2014 budget. Now, this deal is supposedly there to help ease some of the cuts from sequestration, as well as actually have a budget for 2014, which is a pretty good idea, especially since another round of sequestration cuts we're going to take place at the beginning of 2014. Now, this deal goes to avoid that. Now, under sequestration, of course, discretionary spending would have actually been capped at under $1 trillion, about $967 billion, which is kind of ironic, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But the current spending levels under this deal will be about $1.012 trillion for 2014 and $1.014 trillion for 2015. That's a lot of math and budget talk, not necessarily interesting, but you see that there is an increase in spending over what we would have had we left sequestration in effect. Now, the ironic part about all this is that it's kind of a win for Paul Ryan. Now, Paul Ryan, like I said, working on this with Patty Murray. He's supposedly the budget guru. And before this whole deal, we didn't really see a whole lot of him, which is kind of funny. You know, after the election, after he and Mitt Romney lost the election, he kind of disappeared for a while, and now he's back. And he's back in a sort of a big way, because this is sort of a big deal. Him working together with a Democrat to try and forge a bipartisan deal on the budget, and it seems that they're pretty successful. Now, of course, we don't know if the Republicans are going to pass this or not. There's a lot of conservative groups that are obviously against the deal. A lot of your major conservative Tea Party groups are totally against this deal, obviously for stupid reasons. You know, we're not cutting enough. Now, the ironic part, going back to Paul Ryan, is this is a win for him, because not only does it make him look bipartisan, but it also, and get this, it's also cuts more spending than his original Ryan budget. You know, you remember the Paul Ryan budget that was too extreme during the election, made too many deep cuts. This has even more cuts, less spending than the Ryan bill. This is where we're at in our body politic now. This is where we're sitting, of where we can have a budget that's even less than the extreme Paul Ryan budget just a short year later. It's crazy how far we've gone, especially with sequestration. That was never even supposed to happen. So anyway, when it comes to how much spending has been increased, well, who benefits? Well, obviously the defense contractors benefit greatly from this. It actually increases spending on defense by about $22 billion. That essentially erases the sequestration cuts from the Pentagon. Now, other programs, the non-defense discretionary programs, also seen a little bit of a bump, but it's not as much of a bump to really offset a lot of the deep cuts that we've made in non-defense discretionary programs. Now, these cuts in these programs have hurt these programs a lot, such as Head Start, Meals on Wheels, homelessness assistance, Section 8 vouchers, stuff that people actually need, as opposed to we got to make more bombs. That's our priorities here in America, making more bombs. Not only that, but another particular part of this deal is how they achieved more spending. It's not because they raised taxes at all. No. They don't do that. We're not going to raise taxes. What are we going to do? We're actually going to raise fees. It's that old thing of, well, if we can't get revenue from the tax code, then we're going to find it from regular people. We're going to get it from everybody else. How do they do that? Well, first of all, let's look at the amount. $65 billion in additional revenue to ease the sequestration. Now, it comes from, the lion's share of this comes from higher security fees for air travelers. So, if you travel on an airplane, you're going to see higher fees on that stuff. Sorry, got to balance the budget. And another thing is where they get it. $8 billion from having federal workers actually pay higher premiums for their pensions. Yeah, you got to pay more. And I'll get to the pensioners later, because that's really important, and that's an important part of who gets hurt by this budget deal. Because, tell you what, there really aren't that many winners other than defense contractors that benefit from this deal. But one more thing. One more way that they raised revenue through this deal is the extension of the 2% cut to Medicare providers. Okay, so we're not going to pay Medicare providers as much, and we're going to save money. And it goes all the way to 2023, and they save, a pretty good chunk of money. And it does lower the deficit, and that is a good thing. But how you're doing it, that's really sort of the issue. And the issue that I have is that they're getting this deficit reduction through all the wrong places. I mean, this budget doesn't touch a lot of the important issues. It doesn't touch the Farm Bill. Doesn't touch SNAP. Doesn't even go into it at all. That's a separate thing. It also doesn't go into unemployment insurance. Now, a lot of people will say, excuse me, sorry about that. I think I'm getting my wife cold. Now, a lot of people will say that unemployment extensions have gone on for too long. That we're just making a long-term safety hammock out of unemployment benefits. I disagree, because right now we still have more job seekers than there are open jobs. We've got 3 seekers for every 1 open job. And a lot of these people are hanging on to these, are just barely hanging on because of these benefits. And so now they're getting cut off because this bill doesn't even touch any of that stuff. So that's a really, really big problem. And of course, like I said, another problem with this is that it just doesn't do anything to help people. It just doesn't do anything to help anybody. that isn't a defense contractor. So not only that it doesn't help people, it actually goes and hurts people. Now, who does it hurt? Well, I mentioned earlier, it hurts the pensioners, the people that have to pay more into their federal pensions now. And, that's because they're an easy target. A lot of people aren't going to stick up for people with pensions in the public sector. Why? Well, it's because most normal people don't get a pension. And they look at that as, oh my God, look at those federal workers getting all those benefits on my dime. That's bullshit. That's bullshit to me. I don't like that at all. We got to get rid of that. That's a huge, huge problem. So how many people in the private sector get a pension? Funny you should ask. 18% of workers in the private sector get a pension, compared to the 78% of public workers that get a pension. So now you're kind of you got to look at that through the lens of a normal working person and say, well, those assholes are getting paid. Why don't I have something like that? And then you've got politicians that will go and say, look, it's those guys have it because they're taking it from you. They're taking your money and using it to live off of, live high off on the hog. Now, one thing about federal workers is that they've had their pay froze for the last 3 years. 2.2 million workers, federal workers, haven't seen a pay increase in the last 3 years. Now, a lot of people like to work for government because of the generous pay and the benefits. Now, it's making it so it's not so generous anymore. And that's really a big issue. And, John Earnhardt, principal at actuarial and consulting firm Milliman, actually reflects that in one of his statements. And he says, quote, their private sector counterparts will be jealous of the benefits they're maintaining. That's essentially it. And it's another example of the divide and conquer strategy of the class war. You get people that are jealous of other people, of their benefits, and it actually encourages people to want to try and take those benefits away from others because they don't get it. You see what I mean? But it's not the regular worker's fault. It's the politicians that are misleading them and the corporations that are denying them benefits in the first place. We've seen a lot of corporations dial back. Back in 1990, for example, 35% of workers, private workers, had pensions, had good benefits, had decent pay. But it's gone downhill from there because there are no longer decent jobs. So there's a real big issue going on here. And it's kind of a big, big problem. Now, hold. But the main thing that these people want to do, the main thing that these corporations and these businesses say to these these public sector workers is, hey, you got benefits, don't complain. In fact, Lynn Dudley actually said, quote, federal workers have to be careful about crying foul over something of which the other solution would be to eliminate it. And that's the problem here. That's the problem. It's like since they're the only ones with benefits, and by the way, it's because the power of public sector unions, which Republicans are more than happy to try and get rid of. I think unions have their place. I don't think they're perfect, but they have their place in the workplace, right? And that's why we have them, to protect the workers. They say that, well, you shouldn't complain as a worker because we can take those benefits away. And a majority of the American public would actually be on the side of taking those away because we don't have them. But they really need to direct their anger towards the companies and the corporations that don't give those benefits while maintaining an incredibly high profit margin. These large companies, these large corporations that are not creating jobs here in America, but that are creating jobs overseas, and are not basically taking care of their workers the way that they should, and giving them things like pensions and fair pay and vacation time. And that's a real big problem. And so it's just indicative of the class war divide and the direction that the Republicans want to take us. The right wing does not want people to have benefits, and they want people to blame government for them not having the benefits. And they want to blame government workers because the whole end game of this is privatization. And I know it sounds weird. Like, why would that be the end goal? Because they can make money off this. And it just goes along with the ideology of government can't do anything right. Yeah, if you break government, of course it's not going to do anything right. So, and if you break the government worker, and you're making what they're doing is that they're making it so government is not a good place to work anymore, so that more people won't. And they're trying to break down the public sector unions. They're trying to break down the pensions, and they're trying to make the American people blame the federal worker. Now, most people are actually have a favorable opinion. I did a poll a few weeks ago on that. But most people have a favorable opinion of government workers despite this. But don't think that the Republicans won't be trying to change that. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. Still got some internet issues that I'm going to work out. See what I can do. Stay with us. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, we're back here on TYT Nation. I do want to apologize again for the technical issues. Once again, internet problems. You know how it is. Try to run an internet show, run into problems. All right, but we're done with the budget story. Time to go on to something a little bit more fun. And in the news of course, Republicans trying to impose their religious values on everybody else, especially the LGBT crowd, we have, of course, another new anti-gay bill that has just recently come out. Republican senators have introduced their own version of the House's so-called Marriage and Religious Freedom Act. Oh, that sounds incredibly, horribly anti-gay. Actually, it actually sounds. It sounds. See, this is the fun that they love to have. This is the thing that they love to do, is to name it in a way which puts the word freedom, marriage, and fairness, stuff like that. They try to put that in this bill to make it sound like it's not horrible, but trust me, it's horrible. Now, and it wouldn't just affect gay people. Now that's really important, but I'm going to get into that later. Now. This, of course, guarantees the right of businesses and government employees to refuse to recognize same-sex marriage and basically to discriminate against gay people. Now, Mike Lee is, of course, he's one of the bill's sponsors, massive right-winger from Utah. He basically thinks that this is a respect for Christians' religious liberty issue. Now, I'm not kidding. He's like, well, obviously, I have to crush other people's beliefs and impose my own upon them. And if I don't, well, if I can't, you're infringing upon my religious liberty. I don't really think you understand what the word liberty means. But hey, let's go to a quote from him. Now, he says about this bill, this bill protects the rights of individuals and organizations from religious discrimination by the federal government, as if the federal government is openly discriminating against your religion. Excuse me? Upholding the First Amendment does not equal religious discrimination. But as Brian Fisher pointed out earlier, oh, that's okay. Well, the First Amendment doesn't apply to Christians. No, it's there to serve us. Which means that our religion can be the state religion because, well, Christians founded America, obviously, and Jesus founded America. So that part of the First Amendment doesn't apply to Christians. So we can set up our own state religion, do whatever the fuck we want. That's fine. But for everybody else, then it applies. No, you dumbass. It applies to everybody. Especially you, Mike Lee. Now, he says, of course, those who believe in the traditional definition of marriage deserve respect and tolerance. No. No, they don't. Actually, no. You see, here's the thing. Liberals don't have to be tolerant of your intolerance. This is basically saying, like, why... I hate you. Why can't you tolerate me hating you? If you're a gay person out there, you know, if you're a gay person, you can't get mad at somebody hating you. This is essentially what it's trying to say. No, I'm a bigot, so that, but you have to respect and tolerate me being a bigot. No, we don't. No, we don't. Like, yeah, if you believe in a traditional marriage for yourself, okay, get a traditional marriage. That doesn't mean, just because you don't believe in it personally, doesn't mean that you can go and tell other people whether or not what kind of marriage that they can get. Anyway, he says this bill continues. This bill will protect groups from administrative attacks such as additional hurdles with taxes or obtaining federal grants or contracts. Now, I bet you that this really doesn't have anything to do with federal grants or contracts. Because this is to do with me not liking gay people. That's essentially what Mike Lee is trying to say. Oh, I'm sorry, that was David Vitter. Mike Lee had actually said, "It is critical that we clarify the law to ensure that their fundamental civil liberties are not at risk." What civil liberties? You don't have a right to hate. Well, I suppose you do, but what civil liberties are at risk when a gay person gets married? They're not directly coming in and forcing you to go into gay marriages. No, that's not what they're doing. They're just saying that, hey, we're going to allow gay people to get married. But these people are like, no. People like David Vedder and Mike Lee are saying, no. We don't want that. That infringes upon our liberty to hate them. Because if they can get married, then, well, that basically gives gay people legitimacy. And we definitely don't want that because we don't agree with them. But this is America, where you can agree with somebody and you can disagree with somebody. But you can't. That doesn't mean that you can take away their fundamental rights to be able to get married. And in no way does gay marriage take away your religious liberty. You are still free to pray to Yahweh or whatever. Nobody's stopping that. Nobody's saying that you can't go to church or believe in a God. It's just saying that, hey, gay people can get married. If that's a sin in your little book, oh well. So it's pretty much everything else. A great quote that I love from The Simpsons is the pastor himself going through the book. He said, "You ever read this thing? Everything's a sin. Technically, you can't even go to the bathroom." That's essentially it, too. Yeah, pretty much everything's a sin. Being born is a sin. But you don't see Christians out there saying, "My God, these people shouldn't be born." In fact, they're on the opposite end. They're saying, the pro-life thing. Look, it's just so dumb. This entire thing, it just makes you think of, and a lot of the same arguments used against gay people were also used against civil rights and for black people, and even interracial marriage. That it's a sin, that it's not right, that it's not, that they could use the biblical argument against all of that, and they have, and every time that they've lost. Maybe it's time to give it up. Now I want to go to David Vitter as well. Now he had some quotes about this as well that say that his religious liberty, his freedom, is under attack by marriage equality. Now I want to ask first, before I get into that quote, I want to ask, how is his religious freedom under attack by marriage equality? That's what they can never answer. Now he says, religious freedom is a foundational principle to our great nation, and it's something that Louisianans and folks across the nation or country cherish, including the millions of Americans like myself who support traditional marriage. But for a number of reasons, the basic freedom is under attack by the current administration. Once again, how? This bill will protect groups from administrative attacks such as additional hurdles with taxes or obtaining federal grants or contracts. Excuse me. Sorry about that. God damn it. Now, once again, I have to ask, or I have to point out that this is not about taxes or obtaining federal grants or contracts. It's about trying to deny people a right to get married because they don't agree with their lifestyle. Because it will add legitimacy to that lifestyle, and they're totally afraid of that. Now, Brian Fisher, a good example of this is Brian Fisher, where he says, Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson, just the other day, I read an article about him where he basically said, yeah, you got to keep your kids away from lesbians or they're going to catch the gay. No, that's not it at all. No, what they're trying to do is that they're trying to prevent it's preventing social progress. Because once people start to see gay people get married and realize that it doesn't impact their life a single little bit, they start to go, oh, I guess this gay marriage thing, it's not so bad. The earth didn't catch on fire after all. God didn't punish us, didn't punish the nation. Guess it's not so bad after all. And that's what these conservatives are so afraid of. They're so afraid of marriage equality because it will show regular people that might be on the fence that, oh, you know what? That gay marriage, not so bad. I guess it didn't lead to horse marriage. I guess it didn't lead to pedophilia. I guess it didn't lead to any of that stuff. Well, I guess my pastor was wrong. I get what other stuff was my pastor wrong about? Maybe that's the next question they're afraid of people asking. And so, it's one of those things where they're trying to prevent this social progress to stop people from learning the truth. Going back to Pat Robertson, that's the reason he doesn't want lesbians, where he warns people to keep lesbians away from their kids, because they're going to find out that a lot of lesbians are lovely people. But you know what? People are people. And once people realize that gay people are just like everybody else, there's no difference whatsoever, and that who you love doesn't make you necessarily a different person or a worse person. Who you love is who you love, and that's your own choice. And once people see that and see that someone else being gay doesn't affect your life at all, they're going to come around and say, why is there a problem? Why is this a problem? Why are you fighting so hard against it? And I think, that's the way our country is going right now. And bills like these, the implications of these, and I didn't even get to the most important, to the part that actually does affect straight people. I'll get to that. Is that the implications for this would be to roll back this progress, to roll back temporarily, because this bill probably won't pass, and if it does, it only passes the House and gets destroyed in the Senate. So this isn't even going to go through. And we're not going to see anything like this because people like this, people who believe in this, are slowly, and I hate to say it, dying off. There are less and less people who believe this, and there are less and less people who are being judgmental, and gay marriage will continue to become the norm. And that's not a bad thing. Now, the one thing I wanted to mention of how this would affect straight couples is that it would also discriminate against anybody who engages in premarital sex, which would be a majority of the population. So that's another part of the bill that would make it disastrous, and that's another reason why it would never go through. So it's almost like the oral sex thing that Ken Cuccinelli tried to pass. And it just, if anything's an attack on your constitutional right, it's your right to privacy that would be destroyed by that kind of legislation. It's literally unconstitutional. All right. We're going to go on to the next story. This should be kind of fun. Stupid Republican. Stupid Republican of the day. It's now this stupid Republican of the day is North Carolina State Senator Bob Rucho. Now Bob Rucho had tweeted on Sunday that he believes that the Affordable Care Act ranks as worse than the worst atrocities of the past century. To which I say, seriously? Now, I originally wanted to put this as wrong again, Bob, but I'll leave that up to Jank and the Young Turks to make those jokes. It would have been appropriate, though. Just letting you know. Would have been appropriate. Now, his tweet, of course, said, Justice Roberts' pen and Obamacare has done more damage to the USA than the swords of the Nazis, Soviets, and terrorists combined. That's right, because affordable health insurance reform definitely has a higher death toll than, say, 9/11. Yeah, I remember when so many of those people were killed by insurance reform. Oh, right. How about nobody was killed by health insurance reform? Yeah, nobody was killed by health insurance reform. And to be fair, it's not even into effect at all yet. Some provisions, yes, of Obamacare are in effect. But as a whole, it's not quite there. And I don't know how you can compare. And if you want to talk about the website issue being damaging, okay. That's a fair discussion. Now, the website, of course, hadn't worked for a lot of people. But that's nothing compared to comparing a website glitch to the deaths of 3,000 people. And he doesn't just talk about the terrorist attacks. The Nazis and the Soviets have done healthcare, affordable healthcare, and health insurance reform has done more damage than any of that. Look, the last time I did a story like this, when somebody compared health insurance reform to slavery, I thought, come on, guys. You've jumped the shark. And then they've compared it to World War II. Come on, guys. You're over the line. You jumped the shark. This time, it's even worse. The Nazis, the terrorists, and the Soviets combined. Healthcare reform has hurt America. Can you believe this rhetoric? It's no wonder why the rest of the world laughs at us. We're talking about this, we're having this kind of rhetoric when it comes to affordable health insurance reform. And most of the rest of the industrialized world already has health insurance reform. And actually, they have a more socialized system than we do. And so they're probably looking at us like, dude, what the fuck are those Americans doing? This is incredible. The kind of rhetoric that's going on from people like Bob Russo. Now, of course, he comes back after getting a little bit of heat on Twitter. He comes back and says, well, those that tweeted, put your thinking caps back on. Well, you first, Bob. The pen is mightier than the sword. Edward Bull Lytton, 1839. But surely you knew that. I think he knows how to copy-paste. But that's about all I think Bob knows. Put your thinking caps back on. The pen is mightier than the sword. Yeah, but that has absolutely zero to do with what you said. You said Obamacare and health insurance reform has hurt more people, has done more damage to the United States than Nazis, Soviets, and terrorists combined. How? I don't understand how a couple of, okay, so people have lost their junk insurance plans. Some people have lost like 5%. You remember the right wing going all crazy about, oh my God, Obamacare is dropping everybody's plans. No, it's like 5% of the population that have lost their plans because their plans were junk. And yes, Obama shouldn't have went out there and said, if you like your crappy plan, you can keep it. Well, he actually should have said that. He actually should have said, look, if you like your really crappy plan that you're overpaying for and not getting enough coverage, you can keep it. It's junk, but you can keep it. Maybe he should have said that instead. But, and what's funny is that was named PolitiFact's Lie of the Year. That statement right there. Which I think was more of like I don't think he expected people to want to keep their plans. I don't think he expected the outrage, the complete outrage from people that wanted to keep their shit plan without looking into alternatives. And of course, the Fox News hype machine. But remember, it's only 5% of the population that actually had their insurance dropped. And oftentimes, they can find better plans that are cheaper. Some more expensive, understandable. That happens. But oftentimes, you've had people come back later and find a cheaper plan. So, I'm still trying to find out where Bob is coming from when he says affordable health insurance has hurt America more than any of this stuff. Because I just can't seem to find out where he's coming from. It seems like he's pulling this out of his ass. And to which I say, seriously, Bob, that was really fucking dumb. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back. Give me a minute. Welcome back to TYT Nation. We've got a couple more stories for you today. We're going to start out with some voter fraud news. That's right, voter fraud news. Should be a lot of fun here. That's by far my favorite sidebar picture. I love that. So, now Iowa Secretary of State Matt Schultz has been looking into voter fraud for the last year and a half. Now, he spent about $150,000 trying to fulfill his promise of rooting out voter fraud and trying to ensure ballot security over in Iowa. You know, because apparently they have a giant voter fraud problem or something. Now, he's, of course, one of many Republicans that love to trot out this tired kind of idea that obviously the only reason that Democrats are winning elections is because, well, they're voting twice, they're having Mickey Mouse and Pluto the dog go out and vote, and that's why they're winning, or they're voting twice or three times, or they're getting help from the long dead acorn, which is insane. And so they're on this mission to prove that voter fraud exists. Well, he's actually found some. Oh my God. Now, how much? Well, he's actually found about 3 cases in Iowa. Wow, 3 cases. Actually, no. He's found 5 cases. I'm sorry. He's found 5 cases. 5 guilty pleas and 5 dismissals. And so out of all the voting populace in Iowa, he's found about 5 people guilty of voter fraud. And not necessarily what you would think of as voter fraud. And I'll get into some of that later. And so, of course, this guy originally claimed that, there's so much voter fraud going on in Iowa, and that we're sorting through a mountain of evidence. Just a giant mountain of evidence for all these people that are, all these people out there voting for Democrats, and obviously they're messing with the polls and voting twice, and we've got just so much stuff to go through and to root through, and we just want to protect Iowans' sacred voting privileges. So we're going to waste all of this taxpayer money to go and find and prosecute about 5 separate cases. This is great. Now, what kind of cases were they? Well, I've got a couple of examples. One woman named Beth Ann Gallagher, she had actually cast an absentee ballot on behalf of her daughter. Now, her daughter moved to Minnesota and thought she wouldn't be eligible to vote there. Now, it turns out that after she had mailed her ballot, the daughter texted her and said that she was eligible to vote in Minnesota, at which time Miss Beth Ann Gallagher had actually went to the polling place and self-reported that the incident took place at the Delaware County Auditor's Office. That's considered voter fraud, and she pled guilty and paid a nearly $150 fine. So right there, that's an example of voter fraud. Thought she wouldn't be able to vote, so she self-reports. Now, a lot of these are cases of where they did something wrong, they found out they were doing something wrong, and they self-reported. And they said, look, I think I messed up. So it's not even malicious in most cases. Now, there was one malicious one, and that's, of course, the story of a man named Terry Hambrick. Now, he registered via the Motor Voter Act. Interesting. Now, he was attempting to steal his dead brother's identity. Okay, so I think this guy has a few more problems than voter fraud. Like identity theft. Now, of course, he was trying to acquire a driver's license under the name of his brother, who died of SIDS in 1991. Wow, real classy guy trying to take on the identity of your dead brother. Kind of an asshole, right? And, of course, while doing that, he accidentally registered to vote. Now, he was not caught by Mr. Schultz's probe into this. No. He was actually caught because he was arrested for drunk driving, and law enforcement officials determined that he was not who he claimed to be. So that $150,000 that Schultz had actually spent on this probe didn't even find a lot of the people, which is crazy. Now, there was another man, of course, who pleaded guilty, a man named Jason Rowland, who was also a victim of the Motor Voter Act. I love how they say victim when it's actually they had caught people doing stupidly bad things, which is good. They should catch people that are doing stupidly bad things. Now, Rowland was a felon. Now, he was trying to acquire a non-operator ID card, so he just wanted an ID. He registered to vote without realizing that he attested to not being a felon. He must have not done a checkbox or something that indicated that he was a felon. So, when he received a voter ID card in the mail, he didn't just go to the polls, did he? No. He actually self-reported to authorities. Now, Schultz saying that, obviously being the compassionate conservative, right? You remember compassionate conservatism? It was just like, well, obviously you self-reported that you made a mistake. Well, okay, we'll let you go. No. His office actually tried to charge him with a felony election misconduct. Now, however, that is not what he got charged with. Ultimately, he pled guilty to misdemeanor fraudulent practices. Okay, so he made a mistake. He didn't check a box that he was supposed to. He self-reported and immediately got in trouble for a crime. Now, this is the type of voter fraud that's going on. It's not people trying to intentionally misrepresent themselves, at least in order to vote. The one situation that was somebody trying to steal someone else's identity, it wasn't to vote. It was so he could get a driver's license. So this is the kind of stuff that Schultz actually ultimately found. So it's not really, shouldn't really be considered voter fraud as far as, oops, I fucked up on 2 different circumstances, and another guy was just an asshole trying to steal his brother's identity. And these are just 3 of the 5 cases that ultimately were proven guilty. No, but apparently Iowa has a massive voter fraud problem. America has a massive voter fraud problem. Did you know that between the years 2000 and 2010, over 649 million votes were cast in the general elections alone? Do you know how many people were actually caught doing voter fraud? There were 15 cases of voter fraud. And that's from actually impersonation, when you're trying to say you're somebody else so you can vote. 15 cases. That is incredibly statistically insignificant to the amount of votes cast, and far from being a massive problem of voter fraud, like a lot of these right-wing politicians tend to make this problem out to be. In fact, do you know what actually happens at a higher statistical rate than voter fraud impersonation? UFOs. UFO reports. According to 2000 to 2010, there were 47,000 UFO sightings. Do you know what also happens more than voter fraud? Americans getting struck by lightning. You are more odds to be killed by a falling vending machine than to perpetrate voter fraud. Excuse me. It's absolutely insane when you really look at the kind of rhetoric that's coming out about this stuff and the kind of lies. And in this case, they're actually identified lying objects. They're your congressmen. And it just goes back to about how conservatives don't want you to vote. Because as the modern founder of the conservative movement had said in his famous video, the Goo Syndrome, the higher the voting population gets, the less chance we have of getting elected. And it's because their ideas suck. Their ideas are unpopular, their ideas are old, they're stale, and they suck, and they don't represent the vast majority of Americans anymore. And so, yeah, that's why they're trying to restrict voting in all these different places. And they're trying to enact stronger voter ID laws under the guise of trying to protect everyone's right to vote and to secure our ballot against the massive amounts of voter fraud. You know what's massive is their is their ego. They got some balls going out there and saying shit like this, and then not expecting people to call them out for it. But of course, luckily, there are a lot of people calling these politicians out on their bullshit. You had Mother Jones, which is where I got a lot of this good information from, and you've also got people out there like Brad Friedman from BradBlog.com. He does a lot of great work on elections and how Republicans are trying to diminish the right to vote through voter ID laws, and he's really sort of a champion for voting integrity, real voting integrity. So I definitely urge you to go check him out. And that's, of course, at bradblog.com. Follow him on Twitter, of course, at the Brad Blog. Definitely, if you want to get a lot of good information on voting and voter laws, that's the place to go. All right. Just give me one more second. I'm going to take a really quick break, get something to drink, and I'll be back. All right, back here on TYT Nation. Going to get ready here for the last segment. Thank you for sticking with us for the show. Sorry again about the technical issues. That's why we're, of course, running really, really late. So, we're going to get to our final story. And that is, of course, the return of the war on Christmas. War on Christmas. Now, this time, the war on Christmas is actually there was a president of the Kentucky Creationist Museum was on Fox News, and he decided that it was time to strike back against those godless atheists for going after Christmas. My goodness. In his words, he says it's time to take on the atheists who use their free speech rights to doubt the existence of God. Well, do you notice that in that he actually said they're using their free speech rights? Yeah, that's what they're there for. They're there. Free speech rights are free speech rights. But apparently, according to this Kenneth Ham, he decides that, well, your free speech obviously shouldn't be free. No, only our speech is free. Now, he continues with this segment with Elizabeth Hasselbeck. Fox News is, of course, favorite new pair of legs, especially since Megyn Kelly got herself into a little bit of trouble over the "Is Jesus and Santa white" controversy. Anyway, he was telling her that, well, it wouldn't be Christmas without somebody complaining about Christ. Oh, jeez. No, his main complaint is, of course, that atheists put up a billboard in Times Square that suggested that Christ was not needed during Christmas. Well, yeah, you can have Christmas without Jesus. I mean, a lot of people do. I mean, how is the rampant commercialism indicative of Jesus? I was actually against, Jesus would probably be against this rampant commercialism and leaving out of the poor. Yes, Christmas is originally supposed to be about, you hear all this stuff about it's the season of giving, which is great. That actually is more Christ-like than anything. But the current incarnation of Christmas and Santa and all that stuff, not exactly Jesus-like. So I don't quite get, or I'm sorry, so I do get where the atheist billboard is coming from. You don't necessarily need to have Jesus for Christmas. I'm an atheist. I don't need Jesus in my Christmas. My Christmas is spent with family and friends, catching up, getting to know each other again, giving gifts, having a happy time. You can have Christmas without Jesus. That's fine. Or you can have Christmas with Jesus. That's your right here in America. I don't think anybody's really going to have a bitch about that. Now, the atheist group is obviously putting up that billboard to say just that. You can have Christmas without Jesus. That's fine. Or you can have it with. Either or. Doesn't matter. But apparently, of course, they have to go and, well, say, oh my God, putting up that billboard, that is destroying my religious freedom. And they go, and of course he goes into pointing out how small a minority of Christians or atheists are, and that's why they don't matter. Check it out. He says, quote, the atheists are a very small minority in the population, have been trying to impose their religion of atheism on the culture now for quite a while. Getting Bible, prayer out of schools, Christian symbols out of public places. There's so much in there that's actually really hilarious that he gets wrong. First of all, atheism isn't a religion. It's a lack of religion. And another thing is the projection. Look at the projection. These atheists are trying to impose their religion upon everybody else. No, dude, that's you guys. You guys, you Christians, have been trying to impose your religion on everybody else even longer. So, it's amazing the projection that they do, that they really put towards the atheists and say, look at the atheists trying to take away your religious freedom. Once again, and I point this out all the time, is that getting the Bible out of schools and prayer out of schools and Christian symbols out of public places is just following the law. It's following religious law or secular law, which is what our Constitution is. Our Constitution is not based on the Bible. I don't know if you guys know that. I mean, obviously, fundamentalists don't. And they think that, well, obviously, the Constitution is based on the Bible. I mean, equality for everybody. No, have you guys read your Bible? That is not exactly a piece that really kind of engenders equality towards everyone. Excuse me. Slavery was cool in the Bible. Slavery was fine. And you want to say the Constitution, which guarantees that everyone be treated equally here in America, you want to say that document, our founding document, is based on the Bible? No, it's not. That's really, really dumb. No, the atheist groups are just trying to say, hey, look, we're following the law. You shouldn't have public-led prayer in school, school-led prayer. If you want to say a prayer to yourself, that's fine. If you want to have a group that is not sponsored by the school to do prayers, that's fine. But you cannot have a teacher say, okay, students, let's pray. That stuff belongs in religious schools, not public schools. The Ten Commandments belongs in your church, not on the side of a federal building. That's just the way a secular country is supposed to be. And yes, America is a secular country. And I love this. I love this victimhood that Kenneth Ham that Kenneth Ham is expressing right here. He says, because they are becoming so aggressive, I just feel that it's really time Christians really stood up in this culture to take on the atheists and to proclaim their message of hope. Really? Atheists being aggressive by expressing their own beliefs? Why is it okay for you to try and ram religion down our throats, but when we actually stand up and say, hey, look, that's not allowed. If you want to go and do the stuff in your church, that's cool. But in the public square, that's not, it's not supposed to be there. Unless you bring everybody else in with you. But no, it's apparently the atheists are aggressive because they're standing up for themselves. It's like somebody that continuously picks on you. The bully, the bully in the classroom. And then you fucking punch him in the face and stand up to him. And then suddenly he's the one crying and being the victim. That's essentially what this whole thing is. It's just Kenneth Ham being a giant baby victim. I also love this. Now, he tries to compare the Christian message of hope to what atheists believe. He says, what's the atheist's message? There is no God. When you die, that's the end of you? So everything's just meaningless and hopelessness? No. And this is the common thing that people don't really understand about atheists and atheism. Atheists, we live life to the fullest of what we can. When you know that this is it, you only got one life to live, you live it to the fullest. You live to be happy. Not to please some imaginary God who's going to judge you. No, you actually enjoy your life. You're generally a nicer person because you're not going to be a dick to people. Because you realize that, look, this is the only life that I have. Why am I going to be an asshole to everybody? No, I actually want to be a good person. I want to be remembered as a good person. And, there's no reason for me to be an asshole. And there's necessarily no reason for me to just generally be an unhappy person. That's why a lot of atheists are actually happier people. And I know, at least in my opinion, a lot of atheists are. They're happier people because we realize that, hey, we have to be happy because this is our only shot. This is our only chance. So if we don't take life by the reins now, then we're never going to get another chance. At least that's in my opinion. It's not a message of hopelessness. It's a message of, hey, you live it up now and do everything that you can because, because there's nothing afterwards. and that's fine. It's not a hopeless message. It's a message of live your life to the fullest. Instead of being afraid your entire life that you're going to get judged and sent someplace else, or trying to get into this magical kingdom when you die. It's ridiculous. Now, of course, he also points out, like I said, how much of a minority atheists really are, right? Well, he says that atheists are less than 2% of the population, which is technically true. Around 1.6 to 2% of the population basically refer to themselves as agnostic or atheist. And that's fine. And so he's technically right about that, but he's not right about how much of a minority we really are. Because according to a recent Pew survey, 16.1% of all Americans are unaffiliated with any religion. So no, they don't technically go out and call themselves atheists or agnostics, but they want nothing to do with religion. They don't want anything to do with it. They're just not interested. And in fact, 1 in 4 people ages 18 to 29 want nothing to do with religion. They're just not interested in it. They don't care. They don't want to be a part of the Catholic Church, which has actually seen a huge drop in membership, which is, of course, why Francis is on a charm offensive to try and get them back by dropping a lot of the rhetoric surrounding gay rights and abortion and things like that without actually making any fundamental changes in the actual church rules. But it's because, so when people like that say that atheists are a minority, are only 2%, they're half right, they're half wrong. Because you don't necessarily have to refer to yourself as an atheist, because there is a stigma. A lot of people won't admit they're an atheist because of the social stigma that goes along with it, perpetuated by people like Kenneth Ham. And then, of course, they equate atheists as angry people who are mad at God, which I find is laughable because, no, we can't be mad at something that doesn't exist. That's dumb. That's like me being angry at unicorns. Like, fucking unicorns don't exist, dude. How can I be angry at one? Right? And, they're mad at God or whatever. They're trying to spite God. And they love Satan, which that's a fun one, too. That's a fun thing to debunk because if you don't believe in God, you also don't believe in Satan either, that's always ridiculous. That entire argument that's so incredibly ridiculous. They're just mad or they believe in something else. No. Atheist means you don't believe in any of that stuff. So, but of course, that doesn't faze the Fox News audience. These facts and figures. Because, look, people ages 18 to 29, they don't watch Fox News. The normal demographic age for someone who watches Fox News is like 75. So they're talking to these older, more religious, conservative people who are, and, I'm going to get some flack for this, but they're close to dying. Because they're old. They're older people, and they're, close to dying. And when people are closer, when some people are closer to dying, they're more apt to seek out religion for comfort. And I think that's what what some of these people are doing now that are in this Fox News demographic. So I think it's really kind of crazy, this whole thing of the Kenneth Ham and Elizabeth Hasselbeck. I almost called him Kenneth Hasselbeck, which is really kind of interesting. Now we continue with the war on Christmas with another actual strike back, and this was from Rick Perry. Now, Governor Rick Perry on Thursday actually signed a law protecting Christmas and other holiday celebrations in Texas public schools from legal challenges. Now, this is kind of funny because this is dubbed, of course, the Merry Christmas Bill. Well, who's going to vote against that? Apparently nobody, because it immediately sailed through the Texas House and Senate. It sailed through, landed right on the desk, immediately signed, with a bunch of Santas and everything in the back. Now, what this bill does basically says it removes the legal risks of saying Merry Christmas in schools, while also protecting traditional holiday symbols such as, and I love how they add this, the menorah or nativity scene. Now, the menorah is a Jewish symbol. So that's how they get past the law of state sponsoring a religion in schools, is that they said, yeah, but we got Judaism in here too. That's another religion. That's not Christianity. We're cool with that. So that's how they get across that's how they skate past the constitutional issue. They're saying, no, look. The Merry Christmas Bill also covers Hanukkah. That's actually a pretty good stealthy approach. Interesting. Now, upon signing this, Rick Perry had said, it's a shame that a bill like this one I'm signing today is even required. But I'm glad we were standing up for religious freedom in this state. Religious freedom does not mean freedom from religion. I think I'll disagree with that. It means both, really. It means you're free to not have religion. It means you're free to have your religion. That's religious freedom. It's sort of all-encompassing, really. Now, the thing about this bill is that, like I said, it includes more than one religion and secular symbols. Now, so it's allowed in school. Now, it's allowed in school because you can have more than one religion reflected in secular symbols. So that's fine. That's actually one of the arguments that I've been making before, is that, yeah, it'd be fine in public places as long as you have more than one reflected. So Governor Perry said, actually, yeah, okay, that's what we're going to do. It's maybe one of the smarter things that he's done. Fascinating. Now, is there any opposition to this? Not necessarily. Not even the ACLU of Texas is even saying anything. Now, their only statement on this issue is, quote, "We hope administrators and teachers remain mindful that it's an important role of parents to teach their children about matters of faith, not our public schools." Well, there you go. Now, I agree with that. I think it really is important for parents and churches to teach religion and not public schools. But I also don't have an issue with them having a Christmas tree as long as they have a menorah or whatever else. So I'm actually really kind of relaxed on this issue. If you represent the other religions fairly, then yeah, I guess, as long as you're not state sponsoring one religion over another. So I'm actually really, really fair about this whole thing. I know, call me one of the most fair people in America. But I think the real test is, and I'm hoping this happens, I hope that the Muslims decide that they want to put up their own sort of decoration for one of their holidays. Then we'll see if Governor Perry really means it when he says religious freedom. Excuse me. God damn it. So I think the Muslim test, any law that gets passed for religious freedom needs to undergo the Muslim test in America. Because if they allow the Muslims to do it, then you know that the intent of the law is actually legit, like they actually want everybody to have their religious freedom. So I really hope that somebody goes out and does the Muslim test in Texas schools. And then we'll see. We'll see if Governor Perry doesn't have another oops moment. Now, it's kind of funny. One more thing I want to end out with is that what somebody had said about this bill. Now, one of his aides had said, Perry's not a governor that shirks away from the tough issues, and this should not be a tough issue, which is what is even amazing about all this. But this is just political correctness that's run amok, and our brains have completely fallen out as a result. You can't have something fallen out that wasn't actually there. Look, in this PC thing, I think we are PC, too PC as a nation in a lot of respects, but I also think that in some respects we're not. Now, I'm not really going to get into that all too much, but I do want to say that there are much more important issues in Texas than Merry Christmas, than this Merry Christmas bill. You actually have a large amount of Texans that have no health insurance. Maybe the Christian thing to do is actually to take care of those people first, and then sign your Merry Christmas crap. And that's all I have to say on that. That's all I have for you today. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy the show, obviously give us a like and a share. Catch us tomorrow if I'm not completely down with being sick, which it looks like I might be. So stay tuned for updates. If not, you can, of course, catch me on Wednesday, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. That's, of course, unless we have internet problems like we did today. But thank you guys again for watching. Subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/TYT Nation. Go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/TYT Nation. You know all the places to go. Thank you again for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.